Hi, my name is Ben Heldfond. I'm the co-author of Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to speak in front of all of you co-parents, dedicated parents, on this National Parents Day. Unfortunately, I feel a little naked out here today because my co-author, my co-parent to my son, and really my best friend, Nikki was unable to make it. And so, you know, we wrote this book together. We've created this life for our son together. And so we usually do these things together, but I did have her, and I hope this goes through, record a little message for everybody today. So. So I guess they couldn't hear the video, but it's all right. It's not that important. It was just Nikki cheersing all you and with coffee on this co-parenting coffee. And like I said, just honored to be here. A little bit about our story. Nikki and I were married, and about 12 years ago, we got divorced, or I left the house, and I grew up in a household that did not have, let's say, a happy divorce. And my brothers and sisters and I were sort of weaponized and used from my parents' perspective. I'd say they weren't parenting from a position of favorite parent, but more, from not a position of parent of the year, but rather favorite parent. And we were just caught in the middle. We were weaponized. And it was a terrible place to be. And yet, when I left the house, I was going to go down that same path. And I hired a big fancy lawyer and, wanted to go to war. And it was all Nikki's fault. I wanted to show everybody what type of person she was, the fraud she was. And it's just important to say, the fraud that I thought she was, which in the frame of mind I was in, I had no accountability. All of the ending of our marriage was all Nikki's fault. And I was going to show everybody. And I went out and I hired a big, fancy lawyer, and I told him what I wanted, and he was gladly receptive to taking what I wanted. And he, in about a week, came up with a game plan, and it was about 30 pages long. And I didn't really read it. I took the opportunity for some reason, sixth sense, whatever you want to call it. It sat in my backpack for about a week, and I was on a plane ride back from, I think, LA back to Tampa, and I started reading it. And I got about 2 pages into it, and for the first time in years, I was honest, and I got honest with myself, and I saw things for what they truly were. Not how I was seeing them. And that was the basic fact that I know where this path leads. If I'm finishing this War and Peace, I know where this path is going to lead because I've been down this path. And I've been down this path with my parents. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible place for any child to be. From my older brother, who I think was 15, 16, to myself, who was 13, to my youngest sister, who's about 8. Just terrible, terrible place to be. And so I knew what I didn't want. And at that moment on that plane, I got honest with myself. And I also realized that the reality that it takes 2 to make a relationship and it takes 2 to ruin a relationship. And I hadn't been able to see that way in a long time. And so I put it away, didn't finish it, landed on Monday. I called the lawyer and said I was going to find a different way, conveniently. And if you could send me back the remainder of the balance of my retainer, and conveniently it was a couple $100. And if Nikki were here, she would say it was probably just a standard form he used with all of his clients and just charged them a certain amount. But it was the best money I ever spent. And then I called Nikki. And I told Nikki that I needed some time. I was in I had in no space, no place of mind to make any major life decisions, much less one that's going to impact my son's life for the rest of his life, and Nikki's and my future. And so I did. And she said, take as much time as you want. Obviously, we were still, I was living out of the house, and we were still co-parenting our son. But I then went on Nikki went to therapy, and I went on my own therapeutic sort of journey. And I came after the conclusion. I won't bore you with the details of that journey, but at the conclusion of it, it was clear that I wouldn't want to be married to me either. I was just a miserable man. I wasn't the father I thought I was. I wasn't the man I thought I was, and I surely wasn't the husband that I thought I was. And I could no longer buy my own BS that it was all Nikki's fault. And so I called her. I asked her to coffee, and I told her I was sorry. And I went into that coffee that is actually at Starbucks, so it's great for this coffee, but. I went in there with no preconceived notions of the outcomes, no expectations of what I wanted to get out of it, except for just to say I was sorry to Nikki. And then she in turn apologized to me. And to this date, I've known her for 23 years. I think it's the first and only time that we've said those words to each other. But it was the most important. And look, it didn't all of a sudden turn into our happy divorce. We didn't turn into best friends at that moment, but we had we had sort of cleaned up the wreckage of the past. And I think that is one step if you want to have a successful co-parenting relationship. At least for Nick and I, it was based and built on accountability and forgiveness, and owning your side of the street, and understanding that I think it's important to say that there are some caveats to this next statement. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, but for the most part, it takes two to make a relationship, and it takes two to ruin a relationship. And divorce pushes, at least for a man, and I'm sure it's the same for the woman, but pushes every sort of. I think Ebony said it brilliantly about ego, but divorce pushes those romance and finance buttons that speak straight to ego, and pushes it quickly and pushes it rapidly. And just like in business, you don't want to put emotion into business. And a divorce process is, for all intents and purposes, a business deal, but unfortunately, it's a business deal wrapped in all of these emotions that major decisions shouldn't be based on: resentment, hatred, fear, and the list goes on and on. And so that was the best. Looking back and sort of looking at going through this process of writing this book, this was sort of the biggest turning point of our divorce. And like I said, it didn't turn into our happy divorce, and then we looked up processes, different types of divorce. And unfortunately, there was no social media at the time, or fortunately, I don't know which way we're going to go on that one, but for divorce anyways, where there were support, right now there's co-parenting support groups, and, what we're doing this morning. Unfortunately, MySpace didn't have that kind of support. So we didn't have many resources to go off of. So I searched the internet and found out about this collaborative process, and we decided to go down that process. But we also took it one step further, and we just tried to see where we could get along. And ironically, we went to the same coffee shop over a couple meetings, and just sort of worked through it. And we worked through it with the principle that we've lived our life, our post-marriage life off of, and that's what's best for our son. Now, look, I know that term gets thrown around a lot. Sometimes it's misused. Sometimes it's used to, back up some behaviors. Sometimes it's used to hate the new partner your ex-spouse has. But for us, we wanted to keep it really simple. And the simplest equation I think we're all taught in school is that 2 + 2 = 4. And in divorce, in the beginning, and to be quite honest, even today, what we do is that equation has to equal 4 for Asher. And sometimes those decisions, even today, but especially back then, were so far, the answer was so far away from 4 for me that it just blew by it, or for Nikki. But if it was for 4 for Asher, that's the one we went with. So it helped us with the financial settlement, the custody settlement, because in the beginning, the main thing that I was concerned about, and Nikki, quite frankly, was any problem with joint custody 50-50 with everything. And I said, of course not. She said, of course not. And I said, everything else, I said to her, I said, then everything else can be worked on. You know, everything else we can work through. And we did. And we took it to our lawyers and said, draw it up. Now, nobody was at this meeting trying to pull one over on the other person. You know, she had her own legal team that she'd go. It was over a series of many meetings. But we took the lawyers out of it for the most part. And we realized that whether it's collaborative or regular or mediation, lawyers work for you. And sometimes you get caught in this, you know, system. My lawyer used to call me once and said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, with all due respect, I won't say her name, but I said, with all due respect, if I want to talk to somebody about my feelings, I'll pay my therapist $125 an hour, not your rate of whatever, $400, whatever she was. So, you know, we didn't get caught up in that cycle, and we figured it out ourselves. And so over time, we've used what's best for Asher, you know, that equation over and over again. That included bringing in new people into our lives. You know, and I don't think step parents get enough credit. They definitely do, and we recognize how important they are, because when we met our spouses, our current spouses, we were a bicycle and we were slowly starting to figure this thing out, and we were faking it until we made it, and we would step on landmines along the way, but we just kept on, you know, going through it and committed to the process because we committed to our son. And that's that is the nuts and bolts of this whole deal. This parenting, yes, this is National Parenting Day, but there's also 364 days of the year. And you know, Nikki and I broke our vows to each other, but we have consistently not broken our vows to our son. And so many times, you know, parents, because of all this hatred and resentment, they deal with these major life decisions based on that, is that they are going to hand their kids a huge emotional bill and expect them to pay for it for something they had no choice in. They didn't order off the menu. They didn't order the wine. They didn't pick the place. They had nothing to do with it, but yet they're going to be stuck with the emotional bill. So, you know, Nikki and my main motive through this whole process, and a lot of it, like I said, was faking it till I made it. You know, a lot of the issues that I had with Nikki and she had with me were still there. But we just put on our big boy pants. And you know, Ebony spoke to it perfectly. About ego, and putting on our big boy pants meant that we would put Asher in front of our own, and in the selfless act of being a parent, whether you're married or whether you're not. You know, I think the one thing that I love about the prefix co, and we use it a lot around divorce, communication, cooperation, collaborative, you know, co-parenting, is that it's together. You know, my wife and I have 2 kids. We're co-parents. You know, we have sometimes different parenting skills or thoughts on parenting. Nikki and I have different thoughts on parenting. But there's a mutual respect, and there is a mutual understanding that together, when we have singleness of purpose, things get done. You know, it's not me versus Nikki, us versus them, right and wrong. There's a middle. And the middle is together. And so, you know, we've had our struggles, you know, but, you know, the main thing, even today, I mean, some of the issues that drove me crazy about Nikki are still there, about her personality, and vice versa. It's a lot easier to accept when she's your best friend than your wife, but you know, we've managed to, you know, pick our battles, respect each other. I do want to get to questions and answers because look, this is just my story. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I just have created something that I'm very proud of. That's why we wrote the book. We want to be inspirations. And if you knew Nikki and I, our personalities and our alpha type A personalities, if we can pull this off, we're pretty much convinced that anybody can. It's just about 2 + 2 = 4 for the kids. And I'll just use the example of this COVID. School, when it first started, Nikki and I got on the phone with each other, which I think is so important. I think there's a time and a place for text messaging. Nikki and I do it, but with the big ticket items, we get on the phone and we talked about how we were going to have the same set of rules at both houses, and what they were going to be. So there weren't different standards, there weren't different freedoms at the other house, and we stuck to it. And, we communicated. And going back to school, same thing. It's just like my wife and I having conversations that we had about our kids. So, co-parenting is a buzzword, and it's important, but it's also, when you're married to somebody, you are the co-parent to that person. Parenting doesn't stop after divorce. I can tell you, and I don't mean to be alarmist, but I experienced the damage of a bad, high conflict divorce. If you're going through it, I'm sorry, and I know what it's like. But at the end of the day, the idea that kids are resilient or they will get over it is complete nonsense and BS. They don't, and the scars are deep. And I know it takes two, just like it took two to ruin Nikki and my marriage, it takes two of us to make this one. And sometimes, accepting the person for exactly who they are will get you a lot farther than trying to change them. There's a lot of different things that can be done, but I'm in awe of everybody who took their time out on this Sunday morning to talk about this important topic, and I'm here to answer any questions. I don't know how they work. So what can you do if the other parent is not willing to come to the table? And that's sort of just what I touched on, and I think. I don't want to say being the bigger person, but sometimes you can affect somebody else's behavior with your own. I think that sometimes with Nikki, if she were here, she'd say something about me and how she deals with me. So I feel like this is a little unfair, but but that I have to decide what's important, right? And what battle is worth fighting. There's some that aren't worth it. There's some that just aren't worth, getting in a compromising position. So I think if the other parent is not willing, I think you can maybe change that a little bit by killing them with kindness. And as cheesy as that sounds, is just being the bigger person, putting your big boy pants on and not reacting to that other person. And hopefully they'll come around. I've seen it. I've heard it happen. I know it did for Nikki and I. And so I just would say, just continue to trudge the road to happy destiny, because this is a process. And I think I did want to just say that really quick is for some of you, this seems like an impossibility, or it seems like I'm speaking French. But it was a 13-year journey. And if you had asked Nikki and I 14 years now, what we wanted to do and what we wanted to accomplish after that coffee shop meeting, it probably would have been just to be in the same room together and not have Asher's our son, and not have him feel awkward or uncomfortable. And here we are, 14 years later, we travel together. We live 7 houses down the street from each other. Unfortunately, my wife is best friends with Nikki, so they team up on me, and I'm best friends with her husband, and so it's just an amazing life. But it didn't happen overnight. So I know it's frustrating. Some of you might be in that position of either newly separated or divorced, but if you're committed, and are willing to trudge the road to happy destiny, I think you'll be amazed before you're even halfway through. So how do you manage having the same rules in the two households? Which again, I think is key, because if Asher and Nikki and I were married, we would have the same rules under the same house, just like my wife and I have the same rules. So it's about communication. Again, it's about respecting the other parent to have a say, coming to a compromise, not saying that your way is the highway, and being willing and humble enough to listen and finding a middle ground, just like we did with our settlement. I mean, I couldn't even dream that we would have worked it out sitting at that coffee shop over a couple of meetings. But we did with humility, and we did with, with the idea of what's best for our son. So, look, I quickly realized at a young age that I had two different rules and two different standards at my mom's house than I did at my dad's. And I also knew that they didn't talk. So being the mischievous-minded youth that I was, I quickly learned how to use that to my advantage. And so, I got into a little trouble with drugs and alcohol, or a lot. And I'm not blaming my parents for that. I'm sure it would have happened anyways, but it was sort of a putting Miracle Grow on those issues. Let's see. Are there tools that you used in order to move forward from your past? That is such a great question. Yeah, for me, now Nikki, if she were here, she went to therapy, and she worked on it with her therapist, which I think is great. What it was for me was first identifying why I had a resentment, and then finding my part in it. And, no matter what had happened, no matter who did or didn't do anything or did something, it wasn't about Nikki. So I would work with this guy, and I would start saying, but Nikki did, and he would go, no, that's not how this process works. This is about your actions, your behaviors, how maybe you reacted to Nikki, or, maybe be honest about some things that you did. And so for me, finding out what my part was, and once I got honest and could look at my part honestly, it was clear I wouldn't want to be married to me either, like I said. So through that process was this big shining, like, it's not Nikki's fault. It can't all be Nikki's fault. And that's the reality. Without the, sort of caveats I said, there's no way a relationship ends and it's laid at one person's foot. Whether it's how you react to them or whatever, it just, for me, that's an impossibility. Let me see what else we have. So can I elaborate on the 2+2 equation again? We were going through some comments on how it feels like 1 + 1 = 3 in co-parenting, and how that translates into in co-parenting. So I'll use this COVID example. Is that, like I said, Nikki and I live 7 houses down. And while Asher was going to homeschool, Nikki and I talked in the beginning. We figured out what the best thing was and what the rules were going to be. But we also talked about it where Asher was going to, go to school. And on the days that he was with me, he'd wake up and he would go down to Nikki's. And we decided that it was best for him to go to school during the day, all day, at Nikki's, because at my house, I have 2 young kids with my wife who absolutely love their older brother. And so when you look at the 2+2 equation, 2 + 2 = 4 for Asher in that equation. It's best for him to go to a quiet house with no other kids and do his studies. What's best for me, and where 2 + 2 = 4 for me, is that's my time. I'm getting cheated out of, time with my son. And so that doesn't equal 4. But that's an equation dealt on ego. He's just got back from, I think, a 10-day vacation with his mom to LA. Not a vacation, she has a house there. But and then The reason Nikki's not here is because she took him down to the Keys because it's mini lobster season with his stepdad. Now, when you add up those days, right, and you divide it by 2, June, July might not come out to equal, 30 days for me and 30 days for her. But 2 plus 2 equals 4 for a 16-year-old who's been locked up, for 5 months, and he has the opportunity to go and do something with his mom or his stepdad. Like that's where it's about him and not about my, counting days and looking at the schedule to make sure, okay, if 15, this was a 30-day month, I want my 15 days. Or she had 16 on 31 days. So it's not like that. We don't count days, but we do what's best for our son. So I don't know if I'm supposed to shut up. There's, as Nikki, you couldn't hear in the video, I guess, but she made a little jab about that I would probably take up all of the talking time anyways, which is true. I talk way more than Nikki does. So I guess that's it.